Hello, free agency family. We are here to talk all things fintech today with the CEO of Clair, Nico Simko, and we have our CEO, Shrivin. And I'm going to let you two mostly talk the entire time. May chime in here and there, but I think a good starting point is a little introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Clair?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. Nico Simko here, founder and CEO of Clair. Founded Clair, I'll start with that. Founded Clair around at the end of 2019. Clair Inc. was incorporated in early 2020. Mission was pretty simple, is most Americans can't really cover a $400 bill. That's even a statistic from a year or two ago. So I imagine, trying to run this statistic again, it's probably even worse now. And oftentimes, the solutions they have to get access to money a little faster is oftentimes predatory. And if not predatory, then their employers oftentimes offer things that are always fee-based. So really the mission of Clair was to say, is there a way where every worker that finished a shift or even finished a day, can they get access to money immediately without paying any fees? The reason why I founded this, and talking a little bit about myself, is I came to the US for college. So I grew up in Europe. My family on my dad's side is originally from Argentina. Came here, didn't have a social security number, didn't have a bank. So really started, working, being completely unbanked. And then luckily for me, I was in a university system. And but still the first few months, and especially the years after, the way of getting paid, bi-weekly, even when you pay via physical check in the US it's cumbersome, especially if you're working hourly jobs where you're typically not working for a career, you're actually working for the pay, was pretty impactful for me. My friends would say, I was talking about launching Instant Pay / Venmo for Europe for so long because I thought Venmo was one of the coolest companies that started in the early 2010s. Applied to Venmo 3 times, got rejected 3 times because I was not an engineer. But that kind of stuck with me. And obviously I didn't right away after college go to tech. I went to the banking world where I learned, a lot how to do escape F2 on Excel and move boxes on PowerPoint. But at the same time, I learned a lot about payment systems. And that, I think, all came together looking at what Uber Money did and thought there was really a future of financial services distributed via employers with better data that could be really, really powerful. And I felt like we were just at the very, very beginning of what modern financial services could do for most Americans.
Let's get right into questions. I'm going to start you with an easy one. The entire startup economy is changing. Mm-hmm. So what the hell is going to happen in your world? No.
Yeah.
But really, as a founder, I think every founder to founder conversation nowadays starts with a how you doing, and what's the crisis in your world?
Yeah.
How's the market impacting you? So what's it like for Clair right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say that luckily, and touching wood, the company is doing very well, just because it's about the elasticity of demand of your product during a certain time, and also the cost of the distribution channel that you're using. It so happens that, we don't distribute a classic consumer product, which is typically high CAC, very low LTV. For the average user, you can have higher LTV for certain prime users, but the average user is the median, better than average, but the median user is actually not that profitable. So luckily for us, we're not in a distribution channel that way. And then the other thing in terms of just consumer demand and quality, and quality of product, we've been able to focus a lot into our product, what we're offering. And we can share it. We've grown from about 100 businesses, about 18 to 24 months ago using Clair to over 16,000 businesses now using Clair. Our growth rate, I think the past 2-3 weeks has been the highest it's ever been. And so growth rate is good. And, when you have a distribution channel that, really front loads the cost, which is, for us, it's partnering with workforce management systems as well as payroll providers. Really puts the onus early on into building good pipes, building good distribution, but then it really unlocks an enormous amount of growth. Yeah.
There are a couple different questions I want to ask out of that, and we'll get, just to give everyone listening a little bit of an agenda, we'll get into some stuff around the market, around fintech, around your business in particular, around your go-to-market.
Yeah.
But I want to start with something interesting you said. So you said 16,000 businesses using Clair. This question is not really meant to pick on you.
Yeah.
But I love educating people about this topic of how to evaluate when startups use certain numbers. For example, uses is often a very interesting one. If you're willing to share however much you're willing to share, when you talk about that, what does that mean in your business context?
Yeah, so let's take a step back and just explain a little bit how Clair works.
Yep.
Clair was founded with, and that's how Jonathan and I met, because he used to work for a workforce management provider, is that for a long time, workforce management was as simple as, Jonathan, at what time you're going to work? 9 to 5. All right, here's a post-it, and if you write on your post-it if you're not going to show up or if you want to exchange your shift with someone. As time went by, time clocks came up, and it was literally paper time clocks, and then those became digital. And I think a few years ago, with after the mobile devices came out, people are like, whoa. Actually, we should put these time clocks into an app, and this app should have all these cool features. And really, I started with a belief a few years back, looking at what some of those companies were doing, that I was like, wow, these are going to be workforce super apps. You can choose your schedule, you can talk to your managers the same way Slack, I think, changed the desk work, right? I thought that this was just starting to happen in the deskless environment. And so what basically, I want to tie it back to your question, but basically the idea is what we did is we went really specific around, we're not going to go direct to businesses. We're not going to go direct to consumer. But what we know is that Clair, because we give a digital bank that advances money as soon as you clock out of work, we do need to know if you clocked out of work. So we do need to be connected to your time and attendance system. We can also do it with payroll data, but a vast majority of our users do it with either scheduling and time and attendance data today. So now let's talk about 16,000 businesses and what it means for our business. So when those providers partner with us, almost all of them, basically what they do is they embed a button in the app of the employee that says, today you've earned, $50, you've worked a few hours. Do you, if you want to withdraw it now and not wait for your payroll, you can sign up for a card and you can get advances as you go.
And that's either a Clair card or a Clair bank account.
Exactly, that's a Clair card. The bank account itself sits at a national bank.
Right.
Cool. It's very similar to Chime and other fintechs, but we are the tech digital platform on top. But yeah, for a lot of people, they see us really as a digital bank, and then there's a lot of features. So when I say 16,000, going back to your questions, 16,000 businesses, that means that among multiple partners that we have, they've released to over 16,000 businesses. 16,000
businesses basically are enabled through their workforce management solutions to access through channel partnership with Clair's features.
Exactly. And the employees see it. That's the most important part, is that employees from one day to the next will get a notification that says, hey, Jonathan, you clocked out of work. Again, you work a lot. And
As
you
get
money. Exactly. But basically, yeah.
It's a great education point, though, because we tell this to our agents all the time of hey, evaluate these numbers correctly. Your business, and we'll get into your business in more detail, but it's clearly going to do well in this time. But I often tell people to be skeptical of when things like usage. This is a great definition of usage because you guys have a very clear way of thinking of your business growing, which is more partners enables more businesses. And that's probably a KPI that you think about a lot. But someone should really ask the question of, hey, can I understand, is that what you really care about? Or do you really care about the end user making a transaction? And you probably track both, I'd assume, very closely. And the challenge is probably getting also your partners to properly put the button in front of the user and increase adoption. So we'll get into that as well. But a super interesting topic for people. Okay, next very easy question. A lot of critiques of fintech will be something like all of the last 5 to 10 years of fintech is a front end to traditional financial services. Now, I really believe in this value prop, and we'll get into that, but I'm curious just how you as a fintech founder think about that, not just for Clair, but broadly.
Yeah, the way I want to answer this question is a lot more around what problem are you solving, right? And when you talk about fintech, it's so broad. It's like banking. It's okay, what kind of banking? Are you thinking about
some people say Starbucks and it's app is banking. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a very good example. We can touch upon that. But I feel like financial services is such a broad thing because it is the bloodline of the economy that it really, I think the logical answer is it really depends, right? It depends. There's a lot of stuff that I think is not really valuable or is a feature. I think a lot of people start companies thinking, oh my God, I'm going to build a great company, but actually what they're building is just a feature that's very replicable. I think there's a lot of companies that have been funded with a lot of money, only realizing very later on that they built a feature that was very hard to be defensible. I think, and that's why I started with, what problem are you solving for users? And is this problem deep and generational enough, or is it are you building first a wedge that will transform into something that's deeper? And I think a few companies are doing that. I think that there is, I'm very lucky to have spoken to thousands of consumers and like multiple times, at least in the segment that I am, like you see consumers that have always banked at their credit union where there's, monthly fees sometimes, or overdraft fees, or products, access to ATMs that they've never had when they travel. And then suddenly you offer them a product and they're able to save, they're able to budget, they're able to have 55,000 free ATMs around the country. They're able to see it's a niece's birthday and it's 5 days before paycheck arrives. And instead of borrowing from somewhere else that it costs money, they can actually take $50, ahead. And I feel like when you actually see either consumers or businesses being really well impacted by these sorts of innovations, like that is very powerful. That is very, very powerful. But if you look at some startups, sometimes they just get stuck in trying to find their wedge, and that doesn't mean they're bad founders. I feel it's just very hard to.
Do you agree with the critique that fintech was in particular, though, very egregious? Like your point, well taken, as to like the wedge problem, but of a lot of support by, let's say, the venture capital class, of front end solutions, traditional problems being solved the same way. Like it was a lot of UI over the past few years.
It was a lot of UI and a lot of things. It's very hard to generalize overall, and I think that yes, there was a lot of UI I think being built that didn't really have a business model behind it, or didn't have long-term traction for sure.
One of the ways to differentiate, tell me if this is how you see Clair, like I think there's, I don't remember what VC says it, but they have a good line where they go like, there are 3 great startups in the world, and I don't remember the other 2 notions he says, but one great type of startup, and Free Agency and Clair both fall into this, helps people make money. And so like there's 2 other categories that, it winds up being a nice sentence, but like that's the real difference, is you're not a UI, to your point, you're trying to change people's ability, like literally the capability, their function of being able to access future cash flow.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think there's it's accretive versus just like it's the same, but with nice little emojis. I don't want to discount the role of emojis, by the way. One company that I love is Venmo. I think they've done an incredible job. I think I love anybody in the digital bank about some of the things that they've built and the virality that they've built. But like, just the simple fact that like it's easier for you to pull out your phone and me paying Jonathan for lunch and having that's faster via phone and like a few clicks than taking your wallet out, making sure you have change, like. It's actually really complicated. So to your point, like that's super accretive, but not everything is accretive.
Yep.
And sometimes to prove that you're accretive, you have to show that, you have to convince consumers to join you. And that means emojis and fun stuff and better UI and a level of also simplicity. Cash App's really good at that, like incredible level of simplicity. I think they've built more of a consumer brand than most consumer brands that I've seen. I think they do a better job at consumer branding than honestly
well, and they're really doing behavior change. It's interesting to think about the difference between UI that is just UI and UI that is incurring behavior change. I think like the cultural elements of like how Cash App got people to think about sending each other money. Venmo started this journey, but I think Cash App, to your point, has like really accelerated it. Like really their innovation is actual behavior change, and not in the traditional Silicon Valley sense of through the app. Yes, the app was there, but the app didn't do that much different than the prior solutions. It was how they began to get you to think differently about using it, which is really interesting. Now let's talk about Clair, because it's so interesting. So for the layperson out there, I'm going to like re-summarize your business. I, employee, want future money. I know I'm going to earn faster, or money I'm about to get. Yes, right. And so I've worked. I'm going to pay it on some schedule. I don't like that schedule. Give me cash. Exactly. This has been tried before. I don't remember the startups' names, but there have been like a few of these.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious, like before we get into the weeds of your function, when you look historically, name a few and talk to us about like, how you view the prior attempts.
Yeah, no, I look, and I will tell to anyone, we're not like, even, people on social media sometimes are like, oh, we've invented this before. Like I've heard all of it. And I'll be the first one to say, we're not the first ones here. I've never said this is the first ever wage advance, solution. We're not the first digital bank. But let me explain the landscape and let me explain where we fit. Is there's two kind of big waves, I'd say, of having a consumer, finish work on a Tuesday and feeling like I could use that money now to, my niece's birthday. There's two types of businesses. The first one.
Is your niece's birthday coming up, by the way?
I try to use that example. My car broke down is usually the other one that I use. So I was right out. No, I'm kidding. But okay. So like the traditional one is what we call direct to consumer. And those are, Dave is a publicly traded company. Bridget is a New York based company, incredible team. Then you have also traditional.
Those are
payday
more
loans.
Like paid. Okay, that's what I was gonna say.
Exactly. And the reason why you put them in this bucket is honestly because you don't really know if an employee worked their hours or not, because you're not connected to the employer.
Not to skip ahead to this, but also the difference it's going to be versus the bucket you guys are in is that's cash coming. And this might be true in your case as well, but correct me if I'm wrong, in like the payday loan or payday loan proxy example, that's cash coming off the balance sheet of the startup or their banking partner. And that might or might not be true, curious for you guys, but you integrated with the employer through their human capital provider, know you have access to capital that is owed to that person on some time scale.
Yes, so it's like the primary distinction, which is important, is data. You have to start with that. Like capital sources, there's different way to put it. So I would put that as like a secondary definition.
You don't think that's that important?
It's not. It's not. I'll explain why it's important. It's important for distribution, for simplicity of product, for also the value prop that you're bringing, to third parties like an employer, of whether you're advancing the capital or not. But really, I'm going back to what does consumer need?
Totally.
They want money now.
Right.
Like they don't care where it's coming from. They just want to press buttons and know how much it costs and what the terms are. So the direct to consumer providers, I think, grow the fastest very early on, because it's kind of, there's nothing that sells more than just giving people money.
And when you don't need any opt-in by the employer, by the bank, nothing.
So you'll see that those startups have had the fastest growth curves that you could see in fintech. I mean, Chime also somehow used that. They were the inventors. Like they really nicely marketed, if you can get paid up to 2 days early with Chime. They grew enormously when this happened, right? So like faster access to pay is a big deal. So that's one category. The issue with that is losses. Losses are pretty high because you don't know if the person worked, you don't know if actually they're going to get paid. Like there's a lot of fraud associated with this. Even without wage advances, like fraud is massive. And
is that because all they're verifying is like a past pay stub to allow you to access it?
Their algorithms are as complex as it gets, and there are some tools to like kind of let users log into their payroll systems. But
they're mostly trying to predict.
They're trying to predict. It's predictable. It's like they're trying to do a risk-based model, and therefore they have to charge fees.
Right.
Like therefore it's $10 a month. That's the average that I've seen.
Which to describe for the folks listening, they have to charge those fees because of the expected loss ratio. You have to charge fees because some percentage of your users are not going to get paid, are not going to have worked, will have lied, or maybe there's some accident and you can't cover the cash.
Exactly, because for if 1 out of 10 doesn't pay their $100 back, then that's basically it's the $10 that you've charged. So anyways, so you are now in so this is all the consumer stuff that has happened for years. I mean, you can go back to the Middle Ages. That was payday lending, right? Like there's nothing new. It's just becoming more digital. On the other side, you have wage advance companies. There's two companies, Daily Pay and PayActive. They're the original ones. Really props to them. Their view is like, hey, we should go via the employer, partner with the employer. This is an employer-backed solution. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to go to larger companies that do care, that have an HR division, have a benefits leader, right? Amazing, right? So they went to very, very large companies and basically said, let's partner, let's do these programs. And they around mid 2010 started, so it's not super old either, but they went ahead, partnered mostly with payroll providers, marketplaces. So this means they didn't embed the product within the UI of the payroll provider.
You have to log in separately.
You have to log in separately. You have to upload files. So it's like, but the trick there, and this was one of the things that we saw, was that for many businesses that didn't have the time and the attention to do it, or nor the resources, it's a lot to take in a change in your payroll process. Like running payroll is not that easy when you have hourly workers, because you have schedule changes, you have new hiring to come in. So like the payroll person, it's the last thing that they want to do on a Friday afternoon. So you're asking them to add an extra thing on their process. And, it can get pretty annoying for a manager to know that their payroll manager, right, is getting annoyed by the fact that there's so much to deal with. And so the insight of Clair was a little bit, it says they're going to do great at big companies. And we bet on that. But there's a world where there's going to be like the winner in the advance of money is going to be someone different. It's going to be a different product. It's going to be a product that is employee led while being embedded within a place of work without really needing the employer to do anything. And so that's where the idea of Clair came in. That's where really the moment of, wow, okay, the aha moment was workforce management systems becoming more powerful. I hadn't realized how much payroll also was a huge opportunity. Right. And so we've partnered with a few pretty large payroll providers at the same time. And that, I think that is where our niche came out. In terms of reconciliation, we decided, we're going to build the infrastructure of a digital bank. So basically the ledgering happens on our front. So when we advance money, we do it on our capital. So we have our external capital. It's not actually ours per se, because we partner with a national bank. So the national bank actually advances money to the consumer under their license and all of this. And
so is that running out of like a dedicated SPV, or is it running, how do they fund it?
No, so because we bring, it's a very good question. So because we bring consumer deposits over to that national bank, because people put their paycheck on that bank.
Okay.
There's then a lot of deposits, so we then take some of those deposits and lend it back. So we're basically running as a bank, but it just so happens that the bank itself that's doing all of this and has the licenses and is doing this is our partner Pathward Bank, also known as MetaBank. They just rebranded, and they have a national bank license. And then so they do both the what we call the DDA, the demand deposit accounts, as well as the lending, and they have the licenses to do that.
So a couple questions coming off of that, and these will be investor style questions. Mm-hmm. Why do these providers, these payroll providers, these human capital providers, not offer some of this themselves?
I mean, I think they try. I think there's been tries. I think Surigin is one example. Gusto has launched something, although they've recently announced that they're discontinuing it a little bit. It's a lot of work. It's the same. My favorite example is to explain that, Peloton could have built a firm if it was so core and they were paying 8% or whatever they were paying to them.
For folks who don't realize, Peloton's buy now, pay later to allow people to access their bikes was to partner very close with a firm. They were 30-40% of a firm's revenue at some point.
It was pretty big. Yeah, exactly. And so, I think that what you realize, and that goes back to your original question around how much is this value add? What you realize is a payroll provider it's really tough to just build a really good payroll provider, differentiate yourself in the market, build the right features, build all the tiny little details that you need to get right. That all the way there to build a bank that also digital banks tend to work very well when you have millions of customers. They're not really economically efficient when you have 100,000 active users. Might as well just delegate this to someone else. And so this was really an Excel analysis, right? It was really, where is the inflection point for a payroll provider or workforce management system to do it on their own? And what I've realized is the price was really high because you needed to take in a lot of compliance complexity, a lot of operational complexity, even before you started thinking, oh, how am I going to make money out of this? And so
how do you guys make money?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So we make money off of two ways. First of all, the most important thing, we never ever charge for a wage advance. So that's the idea is if you need $50, it's your $50. We give it instantly for you. It's on the card. You can go spend it. We don't charge you anything. Very important to me because, again, we wanted to find a modern way to get away from payday lending. We make money because you, as the user, decide to make Clair your primary bank account. What that means is you put your paycheck on Clair. A lot of, call it the average user, or, I cannot quote all the numbers here, but imagine they spend $1,000 a month on the card. We make roughly 1% because that's what you make off of debit. We're going to announce credit later on, but, we make $10 a month, and that's pure interchange. Nobody pays for anybody who does.
It's a front of wallet pay.
Exactly.
You want to be front of wallet just like anyone else wants to be front of wallet, or at least front of bank account right now, front of wallet in the future.
But the reason why, for us, it works, and we have users use Clair for 80% of whatever they've earned, meaning they literally use the Clair card, is because we typically go to places where credit cards are less available, where people, if they have access to credit cards, have a little bit overused them, a little bit scared of them. This is something that's backed by the employer, and this what my last sentence is very important, is I think financial services has been, wrongly distributed for many, many years. It's been this thing that's like always thought as this direct to consumer tool. But the same way, healthcare is mostly distributed via employers. There's a benefit for financial services to be distributed via businesses, because it is cheaper to distribute. There's a sense of trust. Either the software of the businesses have vetted a provider, or the manager themselves. That's a huge deal.
And the access to data.
Like there's, the fact,
because you want to underwrite these users. One of the reasons you don't have to charge the fees that your first category of more payday-like vendors does is you can underwrite. You're not really underwriting the consumer, it sounds like, but you're underwriting your ability to give cash advances and saying, we're backstopped by the employer, so it's actually safe for us to give this money away for free. Or
that's exactly right.
Give the money to the consumer for free.
That's right.
Quote unquote.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that answers it, yeah.
And so there's an interesting, was there a second category of how you make money?
That's it. So we have additional small things, like you can print a check, for example, like if you need to pay rent, we do charge a fee, but they have nothing to do with core banking, using a card, transferring, paying bills. Like that's all free in the app. But if you want to print a check, you can do that. We're going to launch like instant transfers the same way on Venmo or other places. If you want to instant transfer something, of course, ACH is always free, but if you want it instant, there's just a small fee there. So we make money on small things on the side, value-added services. But primarily it's interchange.
Is Clair completely counter-cyclical? Are you guys going to be fine during a recessionary period because more people want cash?
Yeah, I think yes. I think here's the thing. If you only sell wage advances, I think it's completely counter-cyclical. People need it a lot when they're in a desperate situation. But people need it less when they're fine. So if you get those $2,000 checks from Trump, then you're fine. You don't need a wage advance. But the idea of Clair is primarily that wage advances are a feature. Like for me, it's a wedge. It's something that's useful. It gets people's attention. We get it. But what I really want to do, and the way we've built our business model, is get people away from taking wage advances. I don't want them to feel a congratulations notice because they took a wage advance. I think that it's something that I want to help them get away from.
Financial education is coming next?
There is. We have savings accounts that are there. Like there's the ability to budget. There's a ton of stuff that we're doing. And the vision of Clair is absolutely to get people to go away.
So here's an interesting question. Yeah. Everyone in the past 5 years has done exactly that, right? They find their wedge and, you can get Betterment checking and Wealthfront does their stuff. And all of these consumer fintechs have attempted to become the every solution. Is that a trap? I get your mission, right? Yeah. Like I think uniquely compared to those companies, your mission ties more nicely to trying to do it all.
Yeah. It would be a trap if I would say the vast majority of people who have active Clair accounts don't put their paycheck on Clair, because our starting point at Clair is users decide I want to make Clair my primary bank account, right? So where people try to finish, meaning I'm going to build all of this set of features, therefore we're going to become their primary bank.
So we say that differently. A Betterment, as an example, will say we're going to create a checking service so that just alongside our investment services and our 401k services, hopefully we'll persuade a user to come. Whereas you're saying the entryway to becoming a Clair user for any of your products in the future is your first choice, make us your primary.
Exactly.
And that is a completely different go-to-market. It's a completely different user psychology, which means your assumption is no matter what you launch next, you're going to have really high adoption.
Exactly. You said it better, because the idea here is that we start off as approximately 8 times better conversion than the average digital bank. Like we have 8 times more for every account that's opened, 8 times more people, and we're much younger than most of them, make us their primary bank account. And the reason why we're able to do this, and that very few other companies are, is because we come from a trusted source. And I'll explain this. I was at a paper factory in New Jersey, one of our customers, a few days ago, and we were talking to them, and we did like kind of a
This
question.
sounds like the start to an Office joke.
A few people have told me this. I promise they're a paper factory. So we were around. I was like, okay, so where's everyone banking? And I think most people raised their hand when we said like credit unions and local banks. Some do also like the classic retail banks like Chase around New York. But then when we asked people, have you had Chime and Cash App accounts? A lot of them raised their hands as well. So we said, why have you not, moved over to these apps? And just be like, well, because those apps are like, we don't know that we can trust them. We walked out of there with more than 50% of people signing up for Clair as their primary bank account. And the reason why that happened is simply because the manager said, try out these things. Like the manager didn't even say, this is great, I endorse it. No. They said, don't bother me if it doesn't work, but like, this is part of our solution, so you should sign up. And this element of trust is really, really, really important.
I could get Jonathan to sign up for anything right now. No, but really, I agree. Like if I told him, his MetroCard benefit was going to change from don't sign up through Gusto, sign up through Schmusto, he might look at me funny because that sounds weird. But otherwise, he'd have no reason to distrust.
I would sign up immediately.
And so, like, I really get this. When you think about that as like a go-to-market, one of the switching gears a little bit because I think this really is resonating. Now we think about your primary challenge as these channel partners. Is it easy as hell to sell them this thing that they can't offer, aren't offering themselves? Is this like, how does that conversation go?
Yeah, I mean, it's multifaceted. I think that at the very beginning it was hard because we were a bit early. A lot of people were like, why are you not just going straight to businesses? Are you here just because you want to steal our businesses away and compete against us in,
And let's define one of these.
Management?
So let's define like what's the either your favorite or a workforce brand. Maybe not your favorite.
No, of course. I'll give credit to one of the early partners we had, 7 Shifts. Great business. I think they got an investment from SoftBank. I think last year or a year and a half ago. Wonderful business, wonderful founding team, wonderful team. And their vision is pretty simple. They want to help restaurant operators and small restaurant operators manage their staff the best way possible. And they want to delight their journey. Super simple mission, beautiful, hyper-focused. They've been at years trying to perfect that experience. Founder Jordan is a product person. He really is centric around how much are people using the product, how good is it. And we worked with them and, very, very early on, and they placed a bet a little bit on us, basically saying they believed in this vision that their app for employees was going to become a super app. And they're going to be piling stuff on top of it. And I think we were one of the first bets that they made in terms of taking a third-party service, putting a button there that says sign up for Clair. This is third party. There's also a separate app that's going to be, downloadable. And so getting the first ones to initially sign up was tough, but once they signed up and they saw a conversion, then they're like, wow, within a few months, you have like a lot of people are using it. More than 30, 40, 50% of the employee pool is at least clicking on this. We've never seen that level of conversion. Then they got interested. Then we invest. And then they helped us also make our product better. And so what happened, and it's a little bit like HR tech is a little bit like this, is once they announced it, I think it helped us go to the next one. And then the next one also announced it, and the next one also announced it. And the benefit that 7 Shifts had is they were the first movers.
Right.
So then they didn't do it only like out of charity for us. Like they
go get to tell to the next restaurant owner, they say one of the benefits to all of your employees is they get to access Clair.
Exactly. And
they probably, do they say it is Clair right now? This is just a tactical question, but I'm curious how you think about it as a founder. Do they say you get to access Clair, which is wage advance, or do they say you get to access through us 7 Shift wage advance?
Through us 7 Shifts of wage advance.
And I'm fine with that because you still get the consumer branding.
Exactly. Like I am never ever, and this is what I repeat to everyone, is like I want to learn how to empower employers how to do this, but it's not our core business. We come here because they're B2B businesses and we bring a C into the game. We'll focus on the C. We'll make sure that the B is not impacted. We'll remove complexity. There's a world where we want the B to be involved to tell employees to sign up.
Right. That's so let's say we run restaurant number 7. You maybe would like that 7 Shift gives them material so that they can do a new employee onboarding and tell people how to access Clair.
Exactly.
And that's the extent you care.
Exactly. And there's maybe like a dashboard that we need to build and some small things that we need to build for the employer-facing dashboard. Like the employees want to know who signed up, like what's the activation, what's the impact. There's also some stuff that we're trying out now, which is employers want to give benefits into, because we are, there's a full banking experience there. So like, can you give cash back on gas? And that's a rewards program you can build. And then maybe if like enough employees sign up, they can reward them of that. There's also financial education. So again, like this is really core about Clair, is that, and you know, it took us a while to figure that out, but like we really see a wage advance as a feature that hopefully you rarely use. We talk about it a lot because people will listen to us, because it makes sense, because that data should be used to give better credit to people. But that is a slim, tiny bit of what we do. And we've never made money off of this. We make money because we have a contract with you that says, make Clair your primary bank account and you will get all of those features, part of which is a really good one. So we start with the hardest part for the consumer and we build upon it.
How fleshed out is the banking experience?
I mean, pretty fleshed out. I think that we can always do better. And I think my product team, if they were sitting here, they're like, it's not fleshed out enough.
If I was thinking about it from like an either investor angle or a prospective employee angle, have you guys, like, would you say it's as fleshed out as it would be if that was your primary focus? Because you're putting this as a really interesting notion. You're saying basically wage advances are your go to market, but your real product is full financial and banking services for the consumer. Is it as far along as you would expect if that was your primary feature? Or is it something that you were like, we've got to focus on the go-to-market feature, now we're shifting our product focus to the banking features?
No, we've always gone for the consumer first. It's always been our thing. We've, you know, obviously that when you even if you want to go for the consumer first, there's times when you do need to build for partnerships, for employers, because the consumer needs that in order to access it.
Right.
So yes, but you know, I think I have 3, 4, 5 times bigger team that's focused on the consumer than I have on employers and partners. And we will slow down partners if the consumers need better features. To answer your question, like if we solely did this, we would have been better. Not necessarily, because what happens is if we were a direct to consumer company, I would have to spend so much money on marketing and like sales and whatever you want to call that. I don't have this. Mm-hmm. So actually that whole section is a fraction. It's all partners and employers. Therefore, the amount of people that I can have on the consumer side is pretty good. Obviously, like, you know, when you're in the weeds, you're like, oh my God, this feature should be a little bit better. We should have launched instant transfers a little faster. Why don't we, you know, build a credit builder, you know, card? But if you look at it, like trying to close to 10 years to build this. So I think on the spectrum of time, like we're doing pretty well, and consumers are retained. Like over 95% of users like keep their paycheck there month over month as long as they work at that job.
Let's switch gears completely. You could go back in time, 2019 to now. As a founder, what's one thing you do differently?
It's a very, very good one. I interviewed somebody early today, and they asked me the exact same question. And the answer that I gave, and I'll stick to it, is don't assume that you can build it and they will come. I think that it's very easy, especially if you haven't been an hourly worker for 10 years, to assume you know what hourly workers want. And you just go into what you're good at, which is just building products, building, you know, everything that's around the product. And you just build it for 3-4 months, and you get everybody excited about it because you can pitch the whole team to do it. But the assumptions and the insights that you got were wrong.
And what was that with hourly workers and you? Do you think, you know, it was just a matter like what did you get wrong, and what would you have needed to do differently to get the correct insight?
I mean, I'll give you one. Is we really tried with some partners that we had in terms of integrations to embed a button within time clocks. So if you go back before apps, it was physical time clocks. A lot of them are connected to the web. A lot of them have, you know, real-time APIs, so you can actually share some of the data. Or if not, they have a file at the end of the day. So we thought, you clock out, and there's a button that says you earn $10. Like, put your phone number here, and you get a text message. We could build it. It was technically possible. We built it. Very little people signed up because you don't hang out with your time clock, you know? So the idea was we should have tested it, right? We should have found a way to see, do people hang out with their time clocks or not? Right. That would have saved a lot of time and resources. I think another one is, I mean, there's so many, but like, I think another one is we were really juggling with this idea of, should we give people wage advances before they updated a direct deposit? It really is a wedge to get over to, like,
almost like a cost of acquisition. We'll make this wage advance even before we know more about you.
And honestly, like, what you come to realize is you cater basically to people that don't want a new bank. They don't want a new financial relationship. They just
It's good friction for them to have to go through that first hoop with you.
this is something that we're going to be testing. Is almost like I would rather pay you to go get a payday loan.
Right.
Just go do that.
Right.
Send me the bill. Send me a screenshot of your bill.
Right.
But I will show you that this was the last time you're going to do this, because we're going to help you save throughout the month. We're going to help you think through your finances. And in case you really need it, we're going to be there, and it's going to be free and instant. It's going to be better than you have. But, those are mistakes that we made. And we made it, I about 100% trust, and I really think that the team thought about the right time. I signed off on those, it's all on me at the end of the day. But what you realize is don't build it and think that people will come. Try to find this little way to understand why people are making certain decisions, why they're not. And try to get those things really, really, really right, and then go build software.
You said that someone asked you this question in a job interview earlier. Was that a good question from a candidate?
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was. I think this candidate was did a really good job, and I think that candidates. I often say this is candidates who come prepared with a lot of questions are typically, for me, the candidates that I like the most, and primarily because. You really quickly sense if people are interested in what you're doing and into the program. It's not that hard to have that many questions. I mean, the proof is here. It's you can just ask a lot of questions for about half an hour. And it's really nice when it becomes a conversation more than a one-way interview.
When you think about this moment in time, going into the rest of 2023, the market's changing, venture capital is changing, that might be adjusting your company's plans and roadmaps. How are you hiring differently? If at all?
Hiring less. It's that simple. I think that's another thing that we looked at is speed of hiring is often highly correlated with mistakes. And I think that the media and everything we know about VCs kind of strongly would disagree with that. Is that the more you hire, the more you grow, the higher valuation, the happier everybody is. I don't know. I don't know that that's true after doing this. I feel like if you're Uber and you're launching one city after the next, then of course it makes sense because you have a repeatable playbook. But when you're building a category defining company and you're building, and when I mean category defining, so you're doing something so different and special that it does take time to get all the details right. But that's also how you build enterprise value. The smaller, meaner, more focused team that you can get, the better. Handoffs is the killer of an early stage company. I'm switching, I need to bring up somebody up to speed. I'm spending time interviewing. I'm coaching someone. That sinks a lot of time. And so the smaller team, the better. But you also need to realize that building companies is hard, and so you have to really balance this with, you have to set the right expectations, because if you then expect a team of 30 people to perform to do as much as a team of 60 people, then that's completely unfair. So then you have to reduce the scope or be okay with longer timelines if you want to have a smaller team. Yeah.
What are your expectations for a Clair employee?
It's a good question. It depends. It really depends when they, where they come into the company, what the experience is, how long they've been with us. I think the most important thing for us is the values. I think that, if our number one value is focus, it's the number one at the top, is it's what I think makes or breaks a company very early on. I think I can go through the list of all of our values, but the ones that really matter is that you actually care about hourly workers. If you're here to extort as much money as you can off of an individual that needs money now, then you're going to be off of our business model. But if you think about being rewarded because there's a product that people like and they keep it during their job, right? And that they reward you by making you your primary bank account 8 times more than they do with Cash App or Chime out there. That's really powerful. And I feel like we want people at Clair that believe in this, believe in the mission.
How big is the team?
Well, it depends how you look at it, because we have people who are consultants around, but we have roughly about 60 people, and then we also have a customer support group in Manila.
And you said you incorporated in 2020.
2020.
How many people have left or been let go?
Yeah,
in that time?
we unfortunately did a layoff this year, and honestly, this was, if you ask me, what was the hardest time. I oftentimes don't want to say this because it's nothing compared to the people that were let go, and there were decisions that retrospectively made sense to like, it made sense that we shouldn't have made them, basically, like bringing in people that then you have to let go because you're like, what were you thinking, that like you were going to grow this fast, that you're going to need all these people, and so we have, I forgot exactly the count of how many it was, because we then like increased the performance bar for some certain team members, but yeah, we had to let go of a few people. I think that's common in tech. I think
to go back and say, beyond the fact that everyone overhired, which I think every startup would say that right now.
Yeah.
What's the other mistake if you look at some of the non-regrettables, or the folks that from a nutrition perspective, you go, okay, this isn't just about efficiency, or it happened in 2020, 2021. Do you have like a primary lesson that you've taken away from your hiring?
Primary lesson of hiring or overhiring?
Incorrectly hiring. Let's go there. You said speed, so your process, but what was going on there when you were too fast? What were you? Obviously headcount, but what about the individuals?
I'll be honest. When you start a company and you raise capital and you find product market fit, and then those are great things. But one thing that's really touching is when somebody did their research, they understand what you're working on, they're passionate about your project. And oftentimes what happens is that's enough. That's not because they're bad people. Like that's not at all. It's just because there's a person position fit that oftentimes misses. And so because the person is very good, they interview very well, they're extremely capable, they really love the mission, that's great. It doesn't necessarily mean that, let's say that, we're going to need guerrilla marketing, but if they're a brand person at heart, it's going to be very hard for them to be incredible. Like, you're asking a fish to climb a tree, And so that is mistakes in hiring that I often made, and that's happened very early on, is because people were so passionate. I was like, well, we'll figure it out, right? But that's making them a disservice because I know what they need. I think there's a book that's called Who, and the whole first section of the book, it's a book about hiring, and the whole first section, it's not about the hiring process, who you're going to hire, and all of this. It's about what's the JD, what's the job description. And guys, let's all talk about, do we agree what this person is going to do and what their objectives are? I can assure you that if you've not done this internally, a lot of people will disagree. The first thing as a service that you can do to a new employee is to actually go through this and get proper sign-off. I think a lot of companies have done this wrong, primarily because there was excess capital. Capital was very cheap. So, but I think that it is really, really, really required. And I see it as big companies. Big companies do this terribly. Big companies are like, I want more headcount because I got bigger budget this year. The number of times that I heard this, and it's like, but that's not how it is, because you're going to make a disservice for them. So I think that I've been obsessive around job descriptions and present and future, meaning like, what's your job description today for your job? But also assume all of this goes right. What could happen in the future? I don't care about where you're going to sit. I'm just thinking, is there a trajectory here for you? Exactly.
We mentioned investors, VCs. We've talked about it a little bit. You have two, I think I saw led your seed and Series A that are well known and good at what they do, Upstart and Upfront and Thrive. Yep. In this moment, when you think about the fundraising journey that you've been on, what do you say to an early stage founder who comes to you and asks for generic advice as to how to pick venture capital firms?
I mean, first, build a great business. I think there's an unhealthy dose of over obsession over fundraising. It's sexy, it's fun, it's great, it's money, it's dollars, it's more dollars than any first time founders has ever seen. So like, I think, first of all, you're here to build a business. You're not here to fundraise.
Isn't it crazy though how it just goes into a bank account that you control? I
Sorry?
talk about this all the time. We talk about it with employees.
It's
crazy.
crazy.
Just there. It's just like it's a line item.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, that's a big number.
That's a really big number. And I'm like, you check it so many times, you refresh. Is it still there? Is it still there? No, but like, and especially because the way VC works is you just get a lump sum of money that's going to last you 2 years. So suddenly it's a big chunk of money. So one of the things that I would say to founders is stop making a big fuss around the stuff. You're here to build a business. That's first thing. Now, if you've built a good business and you have the opportunities to fundraise, I did another podcast on this with Carta around like running your first fundraising process. But one of the things that I suggest, and it might be a little bit contrarian, is it's the people, right? It's the same thing as a company. It's the people. It's finding the right fit for your business. It's finding the people who believe in you, the people who like, you want to pick up the phone at night. We had in our office today angel investors from our pre-seed round, and I asked for a meeting to talk to them about a component of our business because they were founders before, and there's people that I call at like random hours for you need this environment, like you need this kind of cocoon of people that help you. And that's how we made every single one of our decisions. We're going to announce it publicly, but I can do it here. But last year, as Thrive led another round for us, and we never announced it, but they believed in us in a time when we were continuing to prove ourselves. And I think that, but they doubled down, and we have a higher valuation now than we used to. And it's a big deal. And we had a lot of follow on in this investment, but you really need people around that are not only going to do that, but also people who really you can connect with and have dinner and talk about the state of the business, everything that's going good and everything that's going bad. I think people optimize for what's the name of the fund, right? Or like Aditi from Upfront is like an older sister to me. She is really there. She knows when to ask the really tough questions. She knows when to encourage. I put myself through mini board meetings with her, even though the board meeting is not in a month and a half. And I'm like, go drill, like, let's go, let's do this because honestly, I know that she has my back, and I know that we're building a great company together. And so you really, and everybody's different. But I would really recommend one thing is, if you're lucky, have options, multiple term sheets, choose the people.
What's the thing that you think is underrated about the, I'm going to call this the moment of the board, or, maybe I'll ask this question differently. What do you think employees should think about board meetings? And I know that, like, not every founder shares when it's happening or things that come out of it. Yeah. Some do. But I think about this topic a lot, and I'm a transparent founder. So like, a lot of the team has met our lead investor, and here's some of the things that come out of that room. But like, do you think people should be thinking about this differently? Employees, teams, about like board meetings and what happens inside of them? I don't know how people typically think about board meetings, so I don't know what the basis is. That's almost the hard part about it is it's a weird place. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think that the way I like to run board meetings, so I can only explain how I run them. I don't run them particularly perfectly every time, and I only know about it after the fact. And sometimes when I feel I'm underprepared, it's actually a really good board meeting. So it's like, it's really hard to judge pre. Definitely agree with that. But yes, the most important thing that I would say is, if you've done a good enough job throughout the quarter, the board meeting should not be a surprise. It should be the most boring meeting of the quarter. It should be like, you literally are summarizing something you've already summarized twice. Not to, when you're sending that email to like angel investments and stuff, that should be like new, because they also know you're spending way too much time with them. But your board, if they're the right people, they should kind of nod and be like, can we go to the next subject? And they're on their watches, because that means you've done a good job. So I think that's one principle, potentially contrarian. I don't know, maybe most founders agree with, but that's the way I feel. The second one is, I think that the concept of a deck is wrong in board meetings, and I'll explain why. A deck is pushing people to have just a summary of data that needs explanation, right? A deck is a conduit for people to ask questions, right? The problem with a deck is, you show up and you're basically making a presentation to them, like you're pitching the business. And if you fall into your board meeting pitching your business, which I've been caught a few times, and that's why we changed our format, it's a waste of time, because what you want to do is outline like a performance review of this, not human being, but of this C Corp called Clair, and you want to explain how they're doing, right? As a third, and then you as a group want to look at it and say, all right, doctor, tell us what you think, what should we do? And you should have an open conversation.
And so I think decks are not really that helpful. I think decks are great to say, here's a data dump of statistics. But I think what's missing before the board meeting is a memo. And we've took a while to figure out the right format. The last board meeting, it was way too long. It was 19 pages long. We heard about that feedback direct way the day of. But because I felt like I wanted to add more and more and more, and I wanted everybody to really understand, but they knew what was going on, right? And so I didn't need to write all of this. And so for me, I'll get to now how we run board meetings today is we send two sets of documents, and we send it exactly 48 to 72 hours before the board, and we request that everybody reads it before we go. That is a deck. They start with a deck. They just flip through it. They should have questions, and then when they open, there's usually 4, 5, or 6 themes, and the themes are decided by me, and we just talk straight into the business. And one might be hiring, the other one might be fundraising, the other one might be partner prioritization, the other one might be consumer roadmap. We decide, and some board meetings we don't even talk about consumer roadmap, because I'm like, guys, you all know, if you have any questions, ask me. And the way we run board meetings is I arrive, I confirm everybody read. If you didn't read, you're gonna have like tough eyes from me. But the idea is they've never not read it, or at least they've done a really good job pretending they did. And then the way it starts is we go around. It's like, what do you guys want to talk about? So I say, what I want to talk about is in there. So what do you all want to talk about? Usually they want to deep dive on some of the subjects that we have. Sometimes they want to add another theme that I didn't think of. And then what we do is I write these down, and we usually start by the one that we're not covering, so we can just get it out the way. And then we go through the themes, and then we have a lead. One thing that I'm trying to figure out right now is how much do I speak versus the rest of the team. And you know, when you're such a still a small company, I think the board meeting's a good. If you're too many people and too many members of the executive team, the board won't really talk, because they're gonna be scared of saying something that demotivates the team or something like that. So you have to keep the team as small as you can. But you also, I don't want to do all the talking, because a lot of the details in there I think is better explained by the leads. So that's one part where it's like, should we set it up in different calls? People got up and off, or like, you know, that's the last part that we're figuring out. But I'm really happy with this structure, and I feel like I would recommend it to anyone.
Memo, deck, leads, talking through themes.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you hiring?
We are. There's 4 or 5 positions that we're hiring for right now. We're taking our time. As much time as we need. We're taking our time. We've met fantastic candidates.
You need the ideal fits in this moment.
Exactly. Like, I think it's not only about an ideal candidate. Like, we've met, I mean, again, like some people that we've had at Clair, and some unfortunately that were part of a layoff. This is truly, they're wonderful, incredible people. And I think that we like the amount, especially in an earlier stage company, you need to be really careful about the additional layer of, do they fit the position required? If you love them, I'm so sorry, my friend, but you cannot have them. Yeah. And that's the tough part.
It's a good lesson. What roles are you seeking perfect fits for right now?
Today I interviewed for data. We need one person in data. We are going to be most probably hiring somebody as an engineering manager for the consumer side, so the consumer, bank and lending program. We are going to be hiring. I'm running out of my list right now. There's a list of 5 or 6. There is one where businesses really want to talk to us. Like, we hadn't understood how much businesses want to talk to us. And so we're going to hire
employer relations.
Exactly. Employer relations person. And then we are working with some, I would say individuals that are contractors around marketing and around certain things that I think we're not really ready to bring in somebody full time, because we don't need that much marketing, but somebody who can help just make sure that we're doing things very, very well.
Nico, if people want to continue to follow the journey, where do they find you?
So they can go on getclair.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn under Nico Simko. And where else? I think we're on Instagram. We're not on TikTok yet. I want to get that started.
I'm going to start pushing you now.
Exactly.
Send you message. Where's the TikTok?
Hang out, exactly. And they can also follow us on LinkedIn. And really, really lucky to have a wonderful team that I'm able to speak about, because at the end of the day, as a founder, you're only a representation of the team that does the work behind the scenes, and moments like this is a good reminder that, like, yes, I do a lot of talking, but the work is done by the team in the office.